In this week's video blog, I'm going to talk to you about something that I think is a theological sort of fundamental, really. And it's something that we sort of take for granted quite a lot. But it's all there. I went to the allotment this week, and what I saw was quite astounding, really. The week before, 2 weeks before perhaps, we had spent a long time putting into the earth a number of bulbs, a number of seeds, all manner of things, basically. And quite often, if you look at these things that you're planting, they are tiny. They are like, you know, only the size of a pinhead or something like that. Perhaps in terms of bulbs, they're slightly larger, but they are reasonably small. They're also rather dead looking and feeling. They're often sort of, if they're bulbs, they're crackly, they're sort of flaking apart, perhaps. And if they're seeds, they're often like sort of black bits of shit, basically. And you plant them, and as you do, as I did when I returned to the allotment, you discover that they have changed. They've sprouted. There is something growing where there was nothing growing before, and it's come out of what looks like absolutely nothing. I mean, some of these things, some of these trees, you know, they live for hundreds of years, perhaps they live 300 or 400 years, and they are, you know, as tall as a 3-story house, and yet the seed from which they sprang can be held like that. As a tiny little black object which looks dead, dried up, and you would not expect inside that to be a whole tree, you know, 300 years perhaps worth of, you know, landscape changing. It's a miracle, quite honestly. It's a miracle that is evident. I mean, it's almost mechanical in its design. Nothing like that can happen by accident. That's not random chance at all. Even the statistical probability of that is stupidly small. But to get it on that sort of wide-ranging scale, everything like this, you know, all these plants growing from different seeds and bulbs, it's not random. It looks, it feels, it can be timed. You know, within 3 weeks of growing this, that you know, the seed will sprout or whatever. It is very, very obviously by design. For us Christians, it's a miracle. That is the miracle of life. It is something appearing from next to nothing, basically. A little seed, tiny seed, and a gigantic tree. You know, that's new life, that is. And when that happens, when a seed, you know, is buried in earth and it sprouts, that is the moment at which something divine, if you like, has happened. And that's a beautiful thing. It is a beautiful thing, and I love to plant things, and I love to watch them grow. In fact, I love to watch them grow more than I do eating and harvesting or anything like that. What I like to see is something that was there that wasn't before. And quite often these things are absolutely beautiful, you know, blossom on a cherry tree, bright pink, and it just transforms. The whole tree becomes bright pink. You can't walk past it without noticing it. You know, we have an apple tree at our allotment which is in bloom. I've got blooms on my fruit trees in the back there, and they are dazzling. They are absolutely beautiful. So it's lovely for me to see that. And it's something that I've thought of, you know, for a long, long time. It's something that St. Paul hints at in Scripture when he says, you know, even if you have not been told the good news, you know nothing about Christianity at all, you should be able to pick up just from using your noodle and looking around that there is something behind all of this, because it appears designed. It does. It appears designed. It does not appear random. You know, it's calculated. It's time proof. It's not hit and miss. It's not random, and it's not trial and error at all. But what I was thinking when I walked back from the allotment was something a little bit different, and it was an addition to that, really, and that's that these plants have absolutely no purpose except for one thing. In fact, all of nature outside of the human race has no purpose except for one thing, and that is to reproduce, and so that future copies of the same thing can exist. And you will find things like, well, the flowers are beautiful, but they're beautiful for a purpose. They're coloured to attract things that will pollinate them. Every single thing that happens in nature, particularly with these plants, is all geared not to look beautiful, but to have a practical purpose, almost by design again, to enable the species to develop once the plant has died. There almost seems to be a knowledge that the plant is finite, it's not infinite, and this is its one purpose. It must reproduce, because it won't always be there, and if it fails to reproduce, the whole species could go. Of course, if that is the one and only purpose, you have to ask, what is the point? Millennia go by with perhaps an oak tree, and every time an acorn drops, it grows, and every thing it does as it grows is to enable another acorn to drop, and another acorn drops and it grows, and it's a spiral, and it goes on and on and on. But there is no purpose in the moment. The purpose is always a future hope that new life will come again, knowing that the end is near for whatever it is that's trying to do the producing. So there's sort of a knowledge there that those that are in existence are finite. They are doomed to die, and unless they reproduce, there is no hope for the future, and that hope is all that there is. That's all the purpose there is. There's nothing in the present, and oddly, it seems like there's no real point in that happening. Now, whilst that may come across as being slightly negative and almost spoiling the sort of new life that we've that we've just uncovered, it has to be remembered that the creation that is doing this is almost innate in its sense of knowing. There is no knowledge of the good news. There is no sort of almost no morality. There certainly doesn't seem to be any knowledge that they are created and that they can have a relationship with their creator or anything like that. It's a perpetual not sadness, but a perpetual want to reproduce, because that is all that there is. That, I think, is pretty much original sin in creation outside of the human race. That is the damage that's done. And yes, by that I mean that these things, in terms of the Garden of Eden, for example, the trees or the plants in the Garden of Eden did not die. They might have been destroyed, scholars usually say during the deluge, but they didn't die in terms of having a life expectancy where they naturally sort of corrupted themselves, and there was entropy, and they died. So the original plan is not, it does not involve this this death at all, which is possibly why there is such a need to almost have a future hope, to be around at that point where the balance is restored, and there is no longer any sort of death or anything like that. And as Christians, that's something that we can relate to, because that's the scriptural sort of promise. That's the reason that we have the Messiah, that we too can be actually part of that. But with the human race, things are slightly different. Original sin is not just a case of entropy, wanting to reproduce because we know we're going to die. It's a little bit more than that, because we are aware. We have the knowledge of goodness and evil, which is what the rest of the creation doesn't have, okay? That, of course, speaking from Eden, was the apple from the tree of the knowledge of goodness and evil. It's an awareness. And with that awareness, unfortunately, comes the extra sort of burden for us, and that is that we are required to be absolutely perfect in order to be around, in order to have this future hope sort of materialise, if you like. And because we are in a state of entropy, and because we have free will and the ability and knowledge to do bad things, we are doomed in sort of that respect. And original sin, as applied to us, is more a case of the potential to sin. It's not an actual sin, it is the fact that we will at some point produce sin. And the reason that's the case is because we are fallen. So original sin is not in itself. Original sin, I suppose, is the ability to be tempted, and the knowledge that if you are 100% human and fallen, you will at some point give in to that temptation, and therefore you are not perfect. So yes, Christ had original sin as well. He was tempted. The difference between him and us is that he was not fallen, and as well as being 100% human, ergo having the original sin, he was also 100% God, and so that potential never became sin. And that can appear to be a little bit offensive to some people, but that's my theology on original sin, really, and this sort of idea of a cosmic miracle. You can see this reflected in the human world in respect of people who have almost an unhealthy hope in the present of the individual. Do you know, in times gone past, particularly in this country, in England, kings would lead their troops into battle, and at least half the time they would be killed, and you wouldn't see the outpouring of grief that maybe you did over the death of Princess Diana, for example, because it was expected that is what you would do, and there was an added hope that death is not the end. Therefore, if the king should fall, it's not the end of the world. They continue in a better place. And there is a sort of vain hope. 90% of the time, a lot of the people would laugh and joke at those that are religious and believe that there is something, beyond death. But when someone dies, one person dies, even if it's for a good cause, it's an absolute catastrophe. And it's a catastrophe for them because deep down they do not think that there is a future hope, and that is all there is, and that is over, and that is why it is so sad. And I know they say things like, oh, well, you know, we think we'll see you again and you're looking down on us. But they don't actually believe that. They don't actually know that. And whilst there is sort of like that innate hope, just like there is that innate hope in nature, they are not in a place where they know what they have to do in order for that to be the case. And that's the difference, I suppose, between those that are saved and those that are not saved. And that's sort of as far as I've really contemplated it. And now, having sort of told you all about cosmic miracles, I think we'd better do the birthdays. We have quite a lot of birthdays this week. So happy birthday to those who have their birthdays this week. Many happy returns. Don't forget to eat lots of cake. We have got Tom Cameron, Adam Hodgson, Joe McDonnell, Bill Williams, Luke Martin and Antoine Britt. Marvellous mixture there of people that I have worked with, do work with, know from aboard, and those who are fighters. So everything today. And that's it for this week.